Welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're jumping right into a really fascinating breakdown of the freelancer economy. The source material we're looking at today basically acts as a masterclass. It reveals exactly how everyday, passive participants can strategically transform themselves into absolute top earners on platforms like freelancer.com. So let's just dive right in and unpack this whole strategy together.
There's this massive platform paradox. Why do 90% of highly skilled, literally incredibly talented freelancers find themselves stuck in this grueling race to the bottom? They're constantly slashing their rates just to secure a single job. It's tough. We've all seen it, right? People getting completely lost in this massive crowd, undercutting their own value, and then inevitably, that burnout just creeps in. Well, today we're going to explore exactly how the data suggests you can break free from that vicious cycle. Here's the roadmap we're going to uncover today. We'll look at the marketplace landscape, building a standout profile, mastering the bidding process, winning and managing clients, and finally, scaling your freelance business. All right, moving right into section 1, the freelancer marketplace landscape, or as it's called here, the digital bazaar. The research actually suggests that we really shouldn't think of freelancer.com as just some sterile job board. Actually, it's more like a digital bazaar. Picture this. A crowded, incredibly noisy global marketplace. You've got thousands of stalls, bells ringing, people just shouting for attention. In an environment like that, buyer attention is incredibly scarce. So if a freelancer just, sets up a generic stall and sits there quietly, nobody's going to stop. Visibility literally dictates your revenue. So the core challenge we have to solve is, how on earth do you make high-paying buyers stop at your specific stall in such a deafeningly loud place? When you look at the numbers, there is this immense volume of freelancers making up that bottom 90%. And they're essentially just fighting over scraps, right? They're competing almost entirely on price. But then, look at the other end of the spectrum, that top 10%. Those top earners, they absolutely aren't doing 10 times the amount of work. No way. Instead, they're utilizing the leverage of competing on value, not price. It's a perfect visualization of the trap so many fall into. Let's explore how the strategies outlined in our source material aim to actually move a freelancer over into that top 10% column. So, section 2, building a standout profile and really capturing that attention. Okay, so your headline. It is absolutely your best tool for stopping the scroll. Take the classic generic approach. I am a graphic designer. Honestly, it's broad, it's boring, and to a premium client, it's practically invisible. Contrast that with something highly targeted, direct response web designer for e-commerce. Boom, night and day, right? If a client is an e-commerce brand owner who wants to increase conversions, they're totally ignoring the generic designer and immediately clicking on that specialist. The strategy here is optimizing your headline to be hyper-specific. A genuinely successful freelancer isn't just a jack of all trades. They are the customized, specific solution to a client's specific problem. Beyond just the headline, the data points to a few totally non-negotiable trust signals that you really have to broadcast. Let's take a hypothetical freelancer. We'll call her Sarah. So Sarah doesn't just list a hyper-specific niche. She goes further and builds a highly curated, high-value portfolio. She's not showing a prospective client every single little thing she's ever done. Nope, just the premium results she's achieved in their specific industry. And her bio? It's completely client-centric. She's talking entirely about what she can do for them. And finally, she uses strategic review curation, meaning she highlights the exact testimonials that mention things like her reliability and the return on investment she brings. All of these elements come together to form the foundation of a truly magnetic profile. Moving on to section 3, mastering the bidding process and actually winning the work. We've all felt it, the absolute agony of just sending proposals into the void. Spending hours perfectly crafting those pitches, hitting submit, and then nothing but crickets. Draining your connects, wasting all that time without seeing any return. Well, that often comes down to one single missing piece, which is a structured bidding methodology. Because without one, you're honestly basically throwing darts blindfolded. So to stop throwing those blindfolded darts, the strategy breaks down this super effective 3-step sequence. Step 1 is the hook. Listen, successful proposals never start with, "Hi, my name is." Instead, they start by directly addressing the client's core problem right there in the very first sentence. Then, step 2 is the proof. In just 1, maybe 2 sentences, you drop a data-backed example of how you solved this exact same problem for someone else. And step 3 is the call to action. Never, ever end with, "Hope to hear from you." You want to end with a low-friction invitation. Something like, "Hey, I have a quick idea for your project. Are you available for a 5-minute chat?" Doing that just completely shifts the entire dynamic of the conversation. Okay, now let's talk about pricing.
Have you ever heard of the anchor pricing strategy? Well, the research suggests this acts as a bit of a hidden algorithmic secret on these platforms. See, submitting an initial bid establishes a psychological anchor right in the client's mind. If you bid dirt cheap just to get your foot in the door, well, you've just anchored your worth as cheap labor. But establishing a confident, value-based initial bid, that immediately controls the psychology of the negotiation. It instantly signals authority. Even if you end up negotiating the price down just a little bit later, anchoring correctly completely changes how the client perceives your overall worth. The big takeaway here, never be afraid to bid high, as long as the value you bring backs it up.
All right, Section 4, Winning and Managing Clients, specifically focusing on long-term retainers.
I gotta say, perhaps the most crucial takeaway from this entire analysis is this one point. The real wealth in the digital bazaar is absolutely not built on endless pitching and just hustling for the next quick job. Honestly, that's just exhausting. The real wealth is built on returning customers. The overarching goal the source material stresses for every single project is to absolutely delight the client and then seamlessly transition that one-off gig right into a predictable long-term retainer.
So because of that, the absolute ultimate metric of success here is the client retention rate. We're talking about the percentage of clients who actually come back for a second, third, or even fourth project. It basically means your work is so good and your communication is so frictionless that the client wouldn't even dream of going back out into the noisy bazaar to try and find someone else. Obsessively focusing on improving this one single metric is basically positioned as the permanent fix to that super stressful feast or famine cycle that plagues pretty much most freelancers.
And that brings us to Section 5, Scaling Your Freelance Business, looking at some advanced tactics. The revenue breakdown of these top earners reveals a really fascinating reality. Get this, only 20% of their income actually comes from new one-off gigs. 30% comes from repeat clients, and a massive 50% that comes from long-term contracted retainers. That mathematically proves exactly where the most reliable and scalable revenue actually lives. These top earners are just spending significantly less time bidding and way more time delivering exceptional value to people who already trust them, and more importantly, pay them month after month. Okay, so once you have that solid base of retainers established, the framework introduces these elite advanced scaling tactics. First up, productizing common services. Basically, stop reinventing the wheel for every single client, right? Create structured packages with set boundaries. Second, strictly raising your rates on all new bids. Since your retainers are already paying the bills, you actually have the freedom to demand premium prices from any new leads. And third, delegating lower-tier repetitive tasks to other people. Stepping into more of a project manager role completely protects your valuable time for high-level strategy and actually talking to your clients. This really seems to be the ultimate blueprint for climbing to the absolute peak of the platform without burning out in the process. Really, it all comes down to this massive mindset shift. The quote we have here says, "The master freelancer doesn't just look for work. They build a sustainable business engine within the marketplace." I think that perfectly encapsulates the core philosophy of our source material today. It's all about moving away from just being a gig worker, desperately searching job boards, and instead actually becoming a strategic business owner who is constructing this efficient, profit-generating machine right there inside the digital bazaar. So, think about everything we've covered today. We talked about specialized headlines, the 3-step bidding framework, anchor pricing, and that really powerful push for retainers. Armed with all this new perspective from our deep dive, what is your next proposal going to say? The roadmap is right there for anyone who's ready to optimize their approach and actually claim a spot at the very top of the marketplace. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you next time.